Thea 1 and Thea 2 are some of the most unique games I've ever played. Many will call it a 4X game, but they don't follow the traditional rules of it, with more RPG and adventure game elements. Outside of being unique games from other titles, they are both very different from each other despite having the same core concept. Today, we tackle the first of these two with Thea: The Awakening. Even after putting over 50 hours in this title, it's still hard to summarize, so let's just get to it. You start off by clicking New Game and selecting the god of your choice, the difficulty level, and what your starting units mostly consist of. One interesting fact here is that the game will randomly choose 2 gods to be unlocked at the start, with the rest needing to be unlocked by reaching level 3 with the god. 2 in particular, Lada and Perun, are unlocked by completing the main quest and unlocking all other gods respectively. You can also further customize the difficulty to your liking with a decent amount of variables, which is always something I enjoy to do, especially for future playthroughs. You are then told that you are the chosen deity and that you need to guide your people through the world of Thea and the darkness. I'm honestly confused on who exactly you are though, due to some events that happen in the main quest, but it's no big deal. The second game was far more clear on who exactly you were in your group, but that's a story for another day. Your first quest is to cook some food, and once that happens, you're free to explore the world in any direction. It's pretty easy to travel by left clicking on your troop, then right clicking on where to go. The map is in a hex format, so it's easy to know how long it'll take before you reach your destination. Eventually, you'll run into your first challenge. It could be a challenge stimulating the mind or something more focused on brute strength. Either way, the format is basically the same. Your units will be split into 2 hands, with one known as the offensive hand, while the other one is the tactical hand. You'll place your units with the offensive hand. These will take and receive damage once all cards are used from both hands and both parties. Your units in the tactical hand can perform certain abilities to tilt the balance in your favor by confusing the enemy, removing the item entirely, adding defense to a card, and a ton more. It's honestly very intuitive, as I never felt overwhelmed with it, something that was a constant issue in the sequel, but again, that's a story for another day. You can also auto-resolve these challenges, but even towards the latter stages of the game, I still played a majority of them. It's cool seeing your characters fight with so many weapons and abilities at their disposal, especially as you specialize with each character and add orcs, elves, dwarves, and even a wraith at your disposal. It's also cool seeing the awesome artwork of your characters, which I'm always a sucker for. These challenges also don't take a ton of time per encounter, so it never feels like a chore to play through them. Moving throughout the map is turn-based, so you'll need to end your turn in order to restore movement points. But before you do that though, I would recommend that you go to your village and assign your characters to gather whatever they can. You'll need food to survive as well as wood or something else to burn during camping. It's easy to tell how many turns you have before supplies run out, but if your village has a steady stream of food, it should not be an issue. We will get into inventory management a bit later in this review. There's also just a great sense of adventure and discovery. Outside of navigation and challenges, you'll experience the world of Thea and the overall narrative. There's a ton of lore here, as it draws from Slavic mythology, which is often unexplored in video games. While you can just skip the story and move the plot forward, I find myself reading the dialogue to find out more about the world and possible ramifications from my actions. The only issue I have here is that they could only afford one voice actor playing both male and female roles. The second game thankfully addressed this with a female voice actor, but here it definitely takes me out of the experience. And it's not just a linear click next until you're done. Many times you'll be presented with choices depending on what you've learned of the world, as well as the characters within your party. Some of these choices will lead to the challenges I mentioned before. Depending on if you solve things with brute force, trickery, magic, or whatever else is available to you, it can either open up or close future decisions. Sometimes killing a character outright is better as you need the loot, while other times you would rather hear him out for a possibility at a bigger reward or a challenge more suited to your strengths. And yeah, speaking of loot, you'll end up with a ton of it, which brings us to inventory management. This can be obtained from gathering resources out in the wild to completing quests and challenges for usable equipment. Each character has a weight limit depending on their level of strength, so a warrior can carry a 2-handed axe with heavy armor no problem, while a medic may be better suited with a light staff and a t-shirt. A lot of the time will be spent here as well, moving items from your party to your village and vice versa. It can definitely become tedious, especially with how many items you'll acquire from challenges and quests, but it's manageable nonetheless. Within the materials comes the ability to craft. What you can craft is determined by what crafting recipes you have researched. This is something I honestly had a ton of fun with, finding the best combination of resources and what the ultimate outcome could be. Depending on your character's crafting skills can also determine if you end up with a higher quality item. The same can happen as well if the characters working on the item aren't very skilled. A lower quality item can happen as well if the characters working on the item aren't very skilled. It's honestly a ton of fun taking the bones of a dragon and creating an epic two-handed sword from it, or even some really effective light armor from spider silk. Along with the items that you'll gain, you'll also earn experience and research points. Once you reach a certain number of experience points, all of your characters will level up an attribute. For research points, you'll gain 1 research point once the bar is filled, which can then be used for the tech tree. You can discover a new building to build for your village, some new crafting recipes, and even ways to gather some resources out in the wild. It's a pretty good system, and the tech tree is very easy to visualize. Nothing overcomplicated here. As the turns pass and time moves on, any children that you have may end up growing up. It's a bit random when this happens, although there are other factors the game takes into account as well. Depending on the buildings in your village, as well as a degree of random chance, will determine the classes available to them. The basic 3 classes are Warrior, Gatherer, and Craftsman, but there are a ton more that can be learned as well, such as Witch, Hunter, and Medic. All are very important and open up more paths during events. It's why I recommend for your party to be as diverse as possible. Random events will also pop up from time to time, and these can be both beneficial and detrimental. Some can be a sickness that spreads throughout your village, while another can be an opportunity to collect resources and gain a new member in your party. In the later game, the negative ones can be dealt with but are incredibly punishing early on. One involved me sacrificing a random member of my party, and thankfully it ended up being my large crow. Rest in peace, crow. Presentation wise, the game is very well done. The graphics of the world aren't too impressive, but the artwork is fan-freaking-tastic. I'm not sure what exactly it's called, seeing as I'm not an art expert, but I really like the black and white style of it. It's very well drawn, as well as the artwork used during events. The music is also solid with not a ton of tracks, but still memorable nonetheless. You can end your game whenever you want to, but a summary will appear when you complete the main quest. You can choose to continue playing or start anew with the same god with the bonuses unlocked, or a different god entirely. Even after multiple playthroughs, I still like to try the game out with different gods, seeing how I can approach things differently, either from a more soothing perspective or maybe outright brutality. Unfortunately, you can only have 1 save game per profile, which is understandable, but wish it could have been avoided. Thankfully, the sequel added the ability to have multiple save games under 1 profile. And that's where I think we shall end things today. All I can say is, what a game and what an experience. It's such a well-polished experience from multiple fronts with only a handful of hiccups along the way. The card system is fun, the sense of adventure is great, the artwork is very well done, and it is very rewarding from beginning to end. It was a great first impression, and I was hoping that the sequel will ultimately improve on some of the game faults. Unfortunately, that game proved to break more than it fixed, but that's a story for another time. Thank you for watching as always, and this is Powerhouse, signing off.